Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, February 5th, 2013. This morning, the invocation will be given by Pastor Harold Johnson of the Hillside Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, Supervisor Chappelle. Will you join us by standing, please? Pastor, good morning.
Let's pray. We're thankful, God, that we have the privilege of living in a country where we have the opportunity of making decisions that benefit our communities, that benefit our country. I pray that you would give wisdom to our leaders that we have chosen, that you would help them to do things that will be beneficial to each and every constituent of our society. Thank you for that. Bless our time together. We ask it in the name that's above every name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Supervisor Chappelle. The next order of business is the public comment period. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. Action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than to receive the comments and, if deemed necessary, to refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and/or to schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. We have two requests to speak this morning. The first is Ms. Sally Riley, followed by Ms. Dolores Lucero. Ms. Wright, yes, ma'am. R9? Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Lucero. Don't let me forget this one and this one. Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to see if this could be put up on the screen, please. Oh. How do you do that? My name is Dolores Lucero. I live in the city of Shasta Lake. The last meeting that I attend here, and I basically addressed the board and regarding a couple concerns and regarding our sheriff. This letter was sent to me by the sheriff, and it was drafted and it was sent to me by January 8, 2013. He is basically sent me a letter in regarding my public comments to when I actually came to the Board of Supervisors to address you and regarding some concerns that has been going on with the sheriff. I think he's violating my civil rights here under the public, I think it's Public Act. You know, in other words, I have a freedom of speech, and that's part of the Constitution. And he calls himself, I don't think he calls himself a Constitution sheriff. I understand he also said that he is behind us for our to carry or conceal weapons. I don't believe that. Here is a letter, another report when I reported and regarding my life being threatened. There were emails sent to me, and all he did is basically just took a report, not even a report, it's just a log, okay? And he also said that he sent a letter to the White House in regarding to protect our civil rights, basically on the carrying concealed weapon. Well, I also sent a letter to the White House, okay? Before he sent one regarding our to carry a concealed weapon. This was mailed. I sent it certified. As you can see, maybe you can't see it, but I sent a letter in regarding how he violated my civil rights. I sent a complaint. I sent everything about what is going on in this county. because I think it's time that people know, and people need to fight harder. And right now is the time, because it's coming. They will be coming after our concealed weapons. They will take these guns. So we need someone who's going to represent the people, who's going to fight for the rights, who we, the people, could rely on, and have somebody who's going to stand up without any hesitation, saying they're behind us in regarding a concealed weapon. Not just put your name on the letter and send it to the White House with everybody else's name on there with the other sheriff. I think it's wrong. Here is another thing that the Tom Paseco, actually our sheriff, who actually violated my civil rights, when he put a warrant for my arrest actually on the March 28, year 2012. Okay, he actually, what he did, he took my concealed weapon on the March 28, on the same day. Basically, he's saying I'm guilty. He took my permit to carry to protect myself. And here it is, where he signed it. I can't carry my concealed weapon, so my life now is in jeopardy. Now I can protect myself only in my home. I think it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. We'll now move to the regular calendar. Item R1, Board Matters. Consider adopting a resolution which recognizes Shasta County's Employee of the Month for February 2013. Well, if I can, may I have your copy? Yeah. Oh, here it is. Thank you. I have it. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most important things that we do. We recognize the people that work for Shasta County that make things run smoothly. And this morning, we're going to recognize Ms. Christy Cornier, Child Support Specialist 2, Department of Child Support Services, is hereby named Shasta County Employee of the Month for February 2013. Be it thank you. Yeah, sure. Be it resolved that Ms. Cornier is always professional and kind, empathetic and responsive in her dealings with everyone, willing to take on any assignment with enthusiasm, diligent in her work, ethics, and her desire to make a difference. She demonstrates daily what a child support specialist too should be. Ms. Cornier is a positive role model, making her well deserving of this Employee of the Month recognition. I entertain.
Move approval.
Thank you. Second. Moved and seconded. Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good morning, Ms. Love.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Terry Love. I'm the Director of Child Support Services, and it is an honor to be here to represent someone in my department, or to talk about someone in my department. Christy Cornier was hired in our department in 2009 when the probation department was experiencing some budget cuts, and they had to make some layoffs. So I quickly grabbed her up, as a few others from over in that department. And after about a year, the probation was able to recall their staff. But lucky us, Christy had found what she said was her new career in life and decided to stay with Child Support Services. She's been nothing but an excellent employee the entire time. We early on assigned her to our early intervention team because we recognized her great communication skills. This assignment required her to have early contact with our non-custodial parents with the goal of getting the non-custodial parent involved early on in their case so they could be part of the decision making when deciding on how much child support and what their obligations should be. Christy soon became some subject matter expert in two fields in our department. One was the case management system, we call it the CMT tool, and also is a member of the State of California Military Work Group, where we work with veterans in the child support program. Last year, she attended the Veterans Stand Down as a representative child support, where she helped our veterans get their licenses back, answer case questions, and work on modifications that were appropriate. Christy is a cheerleader in our department. She helped co-create a competitive game that made sure that non-custodial parents who had not made payments on their arrears cases in the federal fiscal year, they were contacted, and during this short period of time, over 228 non-custodial parents actually made payments that would probably not have otherwise been made, with collections of over $72,000 in that short period. Like I said, she is definitely an active cheerleader in our department. She is one of our leading child support case managers year to date this year, leading in both number 1 or number 2 in all the performance measures. This morning I come in and I got a voicemail message, ironic that it happened today, but from one of our non-custodial parents who had called to thank Christy and another one of our caseworkers for working so hard to help this person get their life back in order, and quote was said, "Christy is a blessing in helping me get my life back in order." And the person was making a payment that had not been made in a long time. So members of the board and the public, you can be proud of Christy Cornier and the service that she does for this community. And I'm happy to have her receive this award today. Thank you.
Christy, this is a big day.
It is.
You've done an outstanding job for the residents of Shasta County and the employees of the county, and it's a pleasure to present you with this award. Christy Cornier, Child Support Specialist 2. In recognition of your overall professionalism, commitment, and high personal standards in your service to the citizens of Shasta County, signed by Supervisor Keogh, Modi, Giacomini, Chappelle, and Baugh. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Additionally, you will receive a rosewood pen gift set. Shasta County is engraved on the pen, and the gift box is engraved with the Shasta County emblem. You will receive a DVD of this award presentation, courtesy of Shasta County. And finally, you will receive a $25 gift certificate donated by the Mid-Management Bargaining Unit to a local restaurant, a $25 gift certificate donated by the Department Head Forum to Outback Restaurant, and a $25 gift certificate donated by the Shasta County Employees Association, and a $40 gift certificate to a local restaurant donated by the Deputy Sheriff's Association. And we thank all these donors. That's very nice of them to do that. Now, it's your time in the spotlight if you care to address this.
I'm really honored. Working for this county has been amazing. Terry bringing me in after the layoffs at probation was amazing. We were offered amazing training. I work with really wonderful people. So many of you are here. Thank you. My kids, they're here. Brittany and Michael, my son, he's going into the military next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christy. And you will invite them down to participate in the picture.
Okay, Brittany and Michael and Clayton. It's my daughter Brittany, my son Michael, and my daughter's husband-to-be, Clayton.
Excellent. Why don't you folks just get right over in the center. We're going to take two series of pictures. First, we'll take Terry, I guess with you
Do I bring
and
them?
Christy and the family, and then we'll invite the board members down. Can you get all this in the picture? Okay. Get all of this in.
Good job, Terry.
Item R2 is a presentation. Receive an update on municipal bonds from KNN Public Finance Senior Managing Director, David Leffler. Good morning, sir.
Chairman Keogh, members of the board, it's my pleasure to introduce David Leifer. As you know, we have started working on looking at ways to save money, and we're always at the switch, continuing to find ways. We started this process probably 6 months ago or so, but we have now come to a successful conclusion, and we have asked Mr. Leifer to come forward and make a presentation as to what we have been able to accomplish with his guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Lees. Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good morning. My name is David Leifer. I am a managing director at a financial advisory firm called KNN Public Finance, and I have a very brief presentation for you today. The bottom line is I'm the bearer of some good news based on the results of two financings that the county completed recently, akin to refinancing your home, basically. Just like you have a home mortgage, and when the market interest rates drop, you have an opportunity to save money. It's exactly what we have done here. On page 1, if I can get that up, Candace, or perhaps not. We'll give it a second. Just a little bit of background about myself. Well, here we go. On page 1, our firm serves in the role of municipal finance advisor. That's distinguished from other roles like a municipal bond underwriter, which actually sells the bonds. Our job is to protect our clients' interests through the bond process. So we have a fiduciary duty to the borrower, to the county in this case, and we provide independent analysis and advice. And as you can see here, we've assisted the county with two financings over the course of the last couple of years, the most recent being the one I'll talk more about. But if we move ahead here, the first financing was a small financing, a $5 million financing, which was a refunding, one more page please, of your 1998 lease revenue bonds. You can see the amount that we refunded was about $5.8 million. And we saved through this process approximately $875,000 in what we call net present value savings. After you pay for the costs of the lawyers and the professionals and all of that, that's what you saved over the life of the deal, and that's about approximately, there was $250,000 for a year and then $70,000 each year thereafter. And that's a good result. We identify it as 14.8%. It's a metric that we use in the industry, and the common industry standard is a minimum of 3% of present value savings. So when you're above that, that's a good result. When you're above 10%, that's a great result. If I can move on now to the more recent financing, this is the bigger financing, the 2013 Series A bonds, which just closed in January. And as Larry mentioned, we worked on them over the course of about 6 or 8 months. And as you can see on this page, again, a very healthy level of savings. We saved $7.17 million in net present value savings, or 19.6% of the refunded par. Again, relative to that 3% threshold, it's a home run, is really the way I can put it. At the bottom, I identify 3 keys to this success. 1 is getting a high rating on your bonds. 2 was taking advantage of the market conditions. And then 3 was this process I'll show you of how we sold the bonds using a competitive process. So moving on, I just want to stop. This page is a little bit dense with the words. I won't go through it all. But the county staff made a really outstanding presentation to Moody's back in, I think it was November, led by Larry and Bibi and Angela Davis, and others contributed to the presentation as well. And the key to this presentation was emphasizing the county's conservative financial management practices. This really went a long way. I've identified some of those things here. We talked specifically about saving rather than spending one-time monies, and not using local monies to backfill state cuts, and building up reserves. And these were all things which Moody's referenced in their report as being being critical. And in this day and age, at a time when there's a lot of concern about counties and cities in particular, to achieve a high rating, an A1 rating, is an accomplishment, and it's a testament to your board's leadership and on the financial management side. And it really was the key to, I think, to the overwhelmingly positive results we had on the sale. If I can move on to the next page, we talked about ratings, we talked about market timing. This is a graph here which is sort of a snapshot of the bond market. We use this index, the Bond Buyer 20, and sort of dating back to October. And between October and January, you can see we really hit the market at the right time. Interest rates hit a trough. Of course, we didn't know for sure we were going to stay, that was going to be the low point, but we had a good feeling. We liked all the indicators, and it worked out very well for us. And if I had taken this graph back further, back for a year, 2 years, 5 years, you'd see this was the low point as well. Rates were only higher preceding this for the most part. So that would be a very, very impressive graph. Moving on the next page, this is reflection of the way we actually sold the bonds. And we used what's called a competitive method of sale. So we invite the entire underwriting community, all those investment banks are welcome to come. We publish it in the newspaper. We call them all up, and we have an internet bidding platform. And on the day of sale, we say, please submit your bid, and we take the lowest overall interest cost. It's very transparent. Everybody's invited. And this process, I really love this process because it ensures you're getting the lowest rate in the market on that particular day. Had you gone with one of these other underwriters that had a higher rate that day, we wouldn't have done as well. And you can see this process. The low bid that day for bonds maturing in 2032 was a 3.19% interest rate, very low. The second place bid was a 3.48. So that's a really big spread right there alone. And so this process, somebody really stepped up to buy your bonds based on the strength of the credit, and we're really pleased with that. So I love this process. I think it works well, and I would recommend it in the future when possible. My last two slides here, I'll just show you. This slide is a little dense. You don't need to get mired down in the numbers. What I wanted to show you is that we look at how your pricing performed relative to some other lease revenue bonds issues that sold at about the same time. Obviously, they're going to be sold at different days. And so we compare your pricing to an index on the day you sold, and we look at the same spreads to that same index on the days that these others' bonds sold, and then we compare the spreads. And in each case, your bonds priced at a lower spread to the index than these other comparable financings, County of Yolo, County of Fresno, and County of Riverside. And again, there's different reasons why that might have occurred, but we've sort of, we've taken out the variable of the different markets because we're looking at that spread. And again, I think your name sells very well in the market, and it's a reflection of conservative financial management practices. And again, a testament to the way the county is run. If we can go to my second to the last page, this is just a graphic depiction, if you will, of the debt service savings. So the green bars, for those of you who are not colorblind, the green bars are the old debt service on those two bond deals that you had before. This is what you were paying prior to these two refundings, and the blue debt service is the new debt service, and the blue bar, sorry. And so again, that's about a $600,000 per year savings annually. You can see it stair steps down in about 2023 because that reflects the maturity of those, what was originally the 1998 bonds, I think, coming due, and so they drop away, and then you have what's left of those 2003 bonds that were refunded. So this really tells the entire story, I think, right here. And my final page and the concluding remarks, just give them 1 second here. Get that automatic update out. Very good. So in summary, again, just like refinancing a home mortgage, we were able to lock in about $600,000 a year in savings, in budgetary savings, $8 million over the life and present value savings. Encourage the commitment, the continued commitment to prudent financial management. I think that has been reflected well by our rating agency and investors. And again, this commitment to prudent debt management practices, using competitive sale, things like that, ensuring transparency and accountability in your financing program will serve you well. So with that, I'll end, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Questions of board members? Mr. Lees?
I would just like to add that certainly I think it sends a strong message of the support this Board of Supervisors has given staff to make sure that we do maintain good fiscally sound principles. And you have certainly done that, and this is a reflection of that. So I appreciate that. I also want to add, though, you know, we just aren't sitting back and dealing with what's dealt to us or handling that. You know, I mean, we're always looking for ways, and I especially need to recognize Ms. Bibi Palin on this, because she's the one who took on this task early on, and it was no significant task to get this at a point. And you know, we're talking about bond insurers, and we're talking about getting it to a point where we knew we believed the best rate was going to be before Christmas. And so there was some rationale, and we were doing a lot of late nights, and especially Bibi, and FedExing paperwork back and forth, and insurance rates back and forth, all types of things. And I just really appreciate her taking this on. I mean, you have a significant individual that cares about the county, and that should be recognized also.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Supervisor Modi?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, David, for your work and stuff. And I just have one question for
Yes,
you.
sir.
Was it easier than trying to refinance my own house?
Yeah, that's debatable, right? It's become a challenge. Well, you know, I mean, overall, the credit markets have become challenging, and there's a lot of concern about credit generally, both at the individual level for all of us and at the government level. And so it probably wasn't easier, but probably comparable.
Thank you for your work, and certainly Larry and to the staff. I mean, great job.
Thanks.
Supervisor Baugh?
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. Conservative financial management allows this county to continue to offer the very best services it can from its valued employees, and I am very, very proud of the work that you have done, Mr. Lees and Ms. Palin and the entire staff that's been mentioned, and the consultant. I know that if the entire public could applaud you, they would, so I think that we could do that right now.
All right. Thank you.
David, thank you for this very positive presentation this morning. I think it speaks well of the county, but it also speaks well of your dedication to duty, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. We have two items this morning that have been pulled from the consent calendar. Item C14, which is a change from an annual audit to a biannual audit for the Anderson Cemetery District, and item C25, Elk Trail Water Project Notice of Completion. So let's start with C14. Oh, yeah, let's, is there a motion to approve the remainder of the consent calendar?
Yeah, I'll move to do that.
And I'll second Chair Kehoe, along with the declaration in regards to item number C26, which is representing the county of Shasta, the cities of Anderson and Shasta Lake for beverage container recycling and litter abatement. I want to declare publicly my wife is an elected member of the Anderson City Council, but neither of us have any investment in litter or container recycling.
Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll take C14, change in the annual audit to a biannual audit for Anderson Cemetery District.
Good morning, Brian Muir, Auditor Controller. Just from my office's standpoint, the district appears to be fiscally well managed. They've submitted their audits on time. There is a savings here. It may be a minimal savings, but you're talking about a district that has about $30,000 a year of basically general revenues. So even a few $100s is significant. I would recommend approval. I don't see any reason why this isn't appropriate.
I pulled this to ask a very specific question of either you or the representatives of the district. In the past audits, have there been any audit exceptions, any discrepancies, any problems?
Now, the audits, I looked quite a ways back, and there were no exceptions.
Very
The
good.
audits have all been clean.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm going to move approval.
Second?
Been moved and seconded then. We accept the staff recommendation. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Item C25, Elk Trail Water Project, notice of completion. This has been pulled by Supervisor Giacomini.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. This Elk Trail project has been an enormous undertaking, and I wanted to be able to have Mr. Minturn kind of explain to us the process and getting us to this point. Thank you, Pat.
Well, I'd be pleased to. Good morning, Chairman Kehoe, members of the board. Pat Minturn, Public Works Director. And there is a lot of history to this project. This is the Elk Trail project. Familiar, Elk Trail is south of Jones Valley, so here's the east end of Shasta Lake. This is an existing county service area, Jones Valley County Service Area. And number 6, it takes water out of Shasta Lake and provides that to about 350 customers. See, these are all small parcels. This area to the south has been served by individual wells since it was subdivided back in the 1960s. And those wells haven't yielded as well as we had hoped. So there was a popular request for an annexation to either this CSA or down to Bella Vista. Bella Vista was a lot farther. And so this board, began planning for a project such as this over 10 years ago. The first one was the feasibility study back in 2001. This identified a cost of about $47,000 per parcel. And it wound up being about $47,000 a parcel to bring water in. In 2007, this board contracted with Pace Engineering to do a preliminary engineering report. And this is the first step to getting any sort of grants. You got to better quantify the costs, figure out what the project is. So Pace, and the president of Pace is here with me today, Paul Reuter. Pace went through and came up with an overall picture of what this project would entail. And it would entail about 15 miles of water lines because these parcels are so large. It would entail a third intake on Lake Shasta, an expansion to the treatment plant, 2 big water storage tanks, one on the east side, one on the west side. Big project. So then after this, we realized we're going to need to justify grants. So the board entered into a contract with Lawrence and Associates, and they did a big well study out there. And this is really the root of the problem out there. You got 196 parcels, and the soils are such that you've got a very thin lens of groundwater out there, and then the Chico Formation. This study went and sampled 30 wells out there. 70% of them had water quality problems. Contamination, iron, lead, iron, manganese, and even the ones that didn't have quality problems generally had quantity problems. You just couldn't get enough water out of the well, particularly at the end of a drought or a dry summer. So the board then directed staff to go and find grants, and we applied for a lot of grants. And in the end, we obtained 3 big grant sources. One was the USDA Rural Development. Typically, they would provide $1 million grant. We managed to get a $2 million grant out of them. Even though there's only $9 million available statewide each year, we got $2 million. We got an earmark from Senator Feinstein with a lot of local support for $800,000 for this project through the EPA. And the law was changed with with the assistance of our legislators. The law was changed to allow California Department of Public Health to provide a $3.4 million grant. Used to be the limit was $1 million. They provided a $400,000 technical assistance grant and then a $3 million loan. And then they also provided a $4 million zero-interest loan. Of course, loans have to be repaid, so there was an assessment district that was formed out there, and the folks agreed to pay it back. It works out to about $20,000 a parcel over 30 years. And so folks are going to pay on the order of $60 a month to obtain good water, and of course on top of their water bill. There was an assessment district, LAFCO, we annexed into the CSA. We obtained permits from the Forest Service to work in the lake, to expand the treatment plant, and water quality permits. The tank sites, we had to acquire 2 tank site properties. And then we went to bid. You'll recall there was several bid protests. In the end, the contract was awarded to a local contractor, Tyco Construction of Palo Cedro. And it's been under construction. I'd like to show you through a few photographs. I could show you 100 photographs like this. This was just out trenching in the middle of a road in Elk Trail. There was over 10 miles of trenching in the subdivision alone. This is a picture of the lake intake being deployed. Goes down 200 feet below the lake surface, and the lake was brim full, as you can see, when we installed it. So they floated a steel casing out there and then submerged it. This is the treatment plant. There was an existing treatment plant. It was about 2/3 this big. It was expanded, and these are 2 new filters that were added so that we can treat more water faster. And then tanks. This is a 280,000-gallon tank on the east side. We had to acquire this parcel. Eminent domain could not be used on this project, nor would we have recommended it. And then on the west side, it was a little more difficult. You'll notice this is a tall, thin tank. In this case, we actually had to acquire property from 2 adjoining property owners and shoehorn it in there. And as a consequence, the site that we had to go with was a little lower than the one we'd originally anticipated. But we were able to make it work. The site is still lower, so the hydraulic grade line's a little lower. So today there is a notice of completion proposed, but there is one outstanding issue that I would mention. You'll note the staff report recommends filing a notice of completion within 15 days of actual completion of the work. And there is an issue that remains with about 7 properties over here on the west side. It was identified in the initial studies that booster pumping would be required in this area. And from the very beginning, property owners were told that we'll get water to your doorstep, to the street, but it'll be up to you if you want to have 40, 50 PSI, if you have a house up on a hill, you're going to need booster pumping. During the final design, and while we were going out to bid, the standard changed, and it used to be we had to provide 20 PSI. CDPH now wanted 40 PSI. And so these folks obtain a bit of a windfall. The design, as it was assembled, did not entail boostering in this area. Because we're up on a ridge, we can't build the tank any higher than the ridge, and the houses are on the ridge. So booster pumping is going to be required. So what we've done out there is we've offered the people $2,500 apiece to put their own on-site system on. And I don't think it would probably cost most of them that much. If you've got an existing well, shouldn't be a big deal. However, it's voluntary. If the folks out there don't want to do it, there's sufficient funds remaining in the assessment district to build a regional system that would provide water to these 7 property owners. It's going to cost over $100,000 to do that. And the money will come out of course, what would have been leftover savings from the project. Whatever's left over will not be assessed on the property owners. So we're trying to avoid that. We've sent out letters to folks offering them $2,500. We're going to hold off filing a notice of completion until we hear back. And if most of the people go for it, if all the people go for it, then that'll be the resolution. And certainly that would be the best outcome for all the property owners. But so there is that one remaining glitch, but I would highlight that overall the project has been a huge success. I think we exceeded expectations when we went into this. It's been a nearly 20-year process now, and I can report that we have successfully constructed the project. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Supervisor Giacomini.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minturn. Very, very, very good overview, and I appreciate all the work that the county has done to get this project to this point. So if we take action to approve the recommended action today, then does that mean once you get everything you need from those property owners, then you will go ahead in 15 days and file the notice of completion?
There are 2 different alternatives. The first is if the property owners are cooperative and they sign the paper, then we've given them a deadline of until the 15th to decide whether or not they will sign. If they elect to sign, then we'll file a notice of completion immediately. If they do not, then we will come back to the board with a recommendation to hire Pace Engineering to design a booster pump facility. and then we will probably use Tyco Construction to construct that as an addition to this contract. We cannot release this contract and use another contractor because the granting agencies approved this award. We can use this contractor. We can't necessarily go to another contractor. So if we don't do this, then it would have to come out of the CSA budget as opposed to the assessment district budget. And so my recommendation would be to hold off on the Tyco notice of completion until we find out whether or not we need them to build this $100,000 plus booster facility. But staff staff requests permission to do so, but that would be the approach that staff would take going forward.
Okay, so just to be clear, should we take action, in your opinion, to allow you to file a notice of completion today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Modi, followed by Supervisor Chappelle.
Yes, thank you, Pat. I just want to make a couple clarifications, went over it kind of quickly. It's about a $10 million project, $6 million in grants, correct?
Yes, sir.
If you understand, grant, that means it's free. It's
Yes,
paid
sir.
for by other taxpayer dollars, and but to the people who live out there, it's $6 million of money they don't have to repay.
Yes, sir.
And then $4 million, and then you believe you said interest-free?
Yes, sir.
So I want people to understand that too, that these people got a $4 million loan that's interest-free. They do have to pay it back. So I just would say from my experience from the Centerville Water Board, this is one hell of a deal. When you get a $10 million project and you're paying 40 cents on the dollar with no interest, it's a pretty good project. The other thing I want to talk about is you mentioned about the booster pumps. And if you have to design I'll call it a regional, a group, a booster pump system versus the individual ones you talked about, and you take that money out of this project funding, now who pays that back?
The 196 properties in the Elk Trail assessment area.
Okay, so in other words, if they take the more expensive, and then they're going to pass the cost on to all their neighbors.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Chappelle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Minter, for your presentation. I think it's been a long project and probably really hard to get it all together with all the ramifications and the problems you had to work with. You're looking for a yes vote currently now for as fast as correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then, but we do have, I mean, it would be nice to have everybody satisfied. So you are planning on doing something with the 8 residents that right now have inadequate water pressure?
7 parcels, actually.
7, sorry.
Yes, that will be resolved one way or another.
Okay.
Perhaps I could better explain the notice of completion process. The notice of completion initiates the claims process. So if, say, a laborer didn't get paid, if we file a notice of completion, we have to file it within 15 days of completion of the work. Then that laborer has 30 days to file a claim. If we do not file a notice of completion, then he has 90 days. We cannot pay the contractor his remaining retention and release his bonds until that has transpired. So staff requests permission to file a notice of completion once we are complete. If completion will require the construction of a booster pump, then we will hold off until that is complete. But staff merely requests the board's permission to file it upon completion of the project.
Great, thank you. Also, in your opinion, you've offered $2,500 so they can put individual booster pumps in, or probably I'm going to assume it's a rather larger booster pump. What is the most adequate system?
First of all, if I could go back. The booster pumps were anticipated from the very beginning, and the property owners were informed that they would have to add booster pumps. For instance, this statement here from 2010, you'll note. So $2,500 is intended to compensate the property owner for the incremental increase in cost from 20 to 40 psi. They were going to need a booster pump anyway. In my opinion, $2,500 is probably adequate to construct a residential booster facility. But in light of the fact that they already knew that they had to build one, and that it's merely a matter of adding another 20 psi to what would have been required anyway, in my opinion, $2,500 is more than generous and a windfall to the property owner.
Is 40 PSI accurate? Because, I mean, I always thought the PSI should be somewhere around 60.
Absolutely, and that's why the CDPH regulation of going to 40 PSI doesn't really solve the problem for the property owners, because even if we provided them with 40 PSI, they're going to lose approximately 10 PSI through a backflow preventer, and most of their houses are elevated above the road. So even if we were to provide them the regulatory required 40 PSI, they're only going to have 15 to 20 PSI in their shower, and so that's not enough, and they need a booster. And that would be my point, that we're not paying them for the entire cost of their booster, but merely the difference between 20 PSI and 40 PSI.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minturn. We have two requests to address the board this morning. The first is from Mr. Stead. The second is from Mr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Good morning. My
Morning.
name is Bert Stead. I'm president of the Elk Trail Water Association, an association that has worked long and hard in order to get this project through. We were instrumental in getting the vast majority of the financing on this. Yes, paperwork was done by the county, but we found the water. Now, what I wanted to address you today appears not to be a problem at this moment. I wanted to have you consider not putting this project in as completed because of the 7 parcels, but 5 occupied parcels that Mr. Minturn talks about. The county talks in a contract that you will be seeing soon. You probably already know about this contract. I call it cash for cover-up. This contract talks about 40 pounds of water per square inch to the meter. First of all, there is no 40 pounds of water to those 7 parcels to the meter. The county Public Works Office, Mr. Minturn and Paul Reuter's engineering firm, have agreed to move the meter to someplace in a canyon down lower where they could get 20 pounds of water pressure to the meter, which of course gets lost then in the distance back uphill that has to be met or pumped up the hill to those houses. Now, the problem that lies here, as I see it, is the backflow preventers as the main issue. The backflow preventers require 20 pounds of pressure to open up that backflow valve. We don't have that in those 5 properties. We have 13 or less. Now, what that means then, and we all knew about the booster pumps, those of us that were higher than where the meters were, those booster pumps were installed according to the county's regulations. Now, the booster pumps are being forced to attempt to suck the water through the backflow preventer device in order to get the water for the pump to pump it up there, to open up the valve. The backflow preventers, in my opinion, are for the most part not required. They were required to prevent well water from going back into the county's water system. But our wells are separated from the county's water system physically. My well and the wells up there, the pipes have been cut off. Except that we're presumed, I'm guessing, of being guilty of trying to somehow inject our well water back into the county system. So they force us, guilty until proven innocent, to put the backflow preventer device to prevent us from hooking back in somehow to the county water afterward. If those backflow preventer devices were not there, we might very well have enough water for the booster pumps to provide the pressure to the house. We don't have that now. And those booster pumps are having to work doubly hard. They are not inexpensive, and they will fail very quickly. Now, Mr. Minturn failed to mention to you, and I want to get this out. I got 6 seconds. He failed to mention to you why $2,500 is a ludicrous amount for us to sign off on what I consider to be an engineering problem and a county problem, because in this contract it specifically states that these properties are going to acknowledge, and it will be so recorded, that our water system is inadequate and substandard for those properties, which will dramatically reduce the value of those properties if they ever want to be sold. Simple solution, I think. Get rid of the backflow preventer devices for those properties, make it possible for them to get enough water to their booster pumps.
Thank you, Mr. Stead. Our next speaker is Mr. Boyd.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Kehoe and board members. I'm Steve Boyd. I'm a Elk Trail resident. And to say this project has been an 8-year nightmare is a gross understatement. We have climbed over hurdle after hurdle after hurdle in order to get this thing there. And one of the things that Mr. Minturn has forgot to tell you about is the California Water Works standards. And this is the standards by which water systems are to be designed, engineered, constructed, and installed in order so that that water system will serve that parcel rightly for a long time to come. I'm here representing 5 of the 7 parcels that are on Green Mountain Trail, and all 5 of those of us have taken the $2,500 payoff to accept a substandard water system. And remember, I have 12 pounds of pressure. And when I had a backflow device there and I installed it per the county's drawings that were sent out to us, it quickly burned up my booster pump. Now, yeah, we've all understood from the get-go we needed a booster pump. But Mr. Minturn sent us an email several years ago saying that the county was only required to give us 20 pounds of pressure at our meter. And so beyond that, we would have to make provisions, of which my wife and I did. We don't have enough pressure to open up the backflow device, and consequently, trying to pull water, it didn't take the pump more than a few days in order to burn itself up. So the system as designed and as portrayed and given to us doesn't work. The plumber, we actually hired a plumber. We gave him the county's detail. He came out, he installed everything per the detail, including the backflow preventer. My wife and I spent $2,300 complying with the county standards, only to find that we didn't have water. It was the plumber that actually identified the fact that we had no water going through the backflow device. There was 12 pounds going in and somewhere between 1 and 2 pounds coming out the other end. Even though we had installed a booster pump 5 feet in elevation above our meter, there was no water there. So we're looking at the California Water Works standards as just being totally ignored. There's a fire hydrant right across the street, and if my meter has 12 pounds of pressure, that fire hydrant has 12 pounds of pressure. You'll see that the county code says that that doesn't work. We've paid our first tax installment of $710. This is going to extend for the next 30 years. And we're being asked to accept a substandard water system that's going to haunt us forever. The statement says that we know that this is going to be included on a disclosure statement for the property forever. So instead of a water system that was designed to improve my property values, it's actually lowered our property values. This takes away opportunities for financing, for refinancing, and there's a whole lot more here portrayed than what Mr. Minturn presented to you. One last comment. My neighbors have been told recently that because the tank was not located on our property, that my wife and I are the cause of this problem. And I have an email here from Mr. Minturn saying that they had selected another site that didn't have the infrastructure requirements that I have, and the elevation difference is 5 feet. Now, you heard Mr. Minturn say that this tank wasn't put at the elevation where they wanted it. His email says there's 5 feet of difference. That's 2 pounds of water pressure, folks. And for that, we're being asked to accept a substandard system that's going to haunt us forever. And I hope that you make sure that this is corrected before this notice of completion is filed.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Our next speaker is Mr. Rob McDonald.
I need to ask, is there a tank on the property?
Please address the board.
Okay. Is there a tank on the property? Because the simple solution here is to put an elevated water tank up there in the subdivision. You can fill it at whatever pounds per pressure you want, and they have full pressure. I mean, this is simple. And I can't think that it's going to cost much more than the $100,000 you're going to spend on the pump system. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Minturn, any supplemental remarks, please?
I will start out by saying an elevated tank is basically the same as a booster pump. And so we already have storage, a booster pump is equivalent. We are requiring backflow preventers per the health code. The whole idea of this project was to improve water quality. If we leave wells up there in service with their pumps in them, and one of those wells kicks on, it pushes the water out into the water system, and all the neighbors are drinking from their neighbor's well. As I just explained, 70% of the wells up there are contaminated. And so the backflow preventer is required if there is to be a well remaining on the property. The waterworks standard used to be 20 psi. We can't obtain 20 psi on each parcel. We would have to locate some of them at low points. The difference is between 20 and 40. It is possible to configure the pump so that it picks up water. The pump has to be located near the street. In some cases, folks are trying to put their water pump high up. Well, if the water pump needs to be down near the street. As for the 5-foot differential, we had anticipated more elevation change in that. There were opportunities for a higher tank. You see the existing tank alone is a very tall, thin tank. So perhaps I'm going into details here, but as you can see, there have been many issues that have come up on this project. The waterworks standards do allow, see this tank, we elevated this tank as much as we could. We stretched it up vertically to try to get as much pressure as possible up there. Money was very tight. We were trying to save this booster pump. But the waterworks standards are met if folks are willing to sign off. If folks don't want to sign off, then we can build a booster pump facility. It's unfortunate because we told folks going in they were going to need booster pumps. We told folks you're going to get 20 psi at your meter, you're going to need a pump. But if we'll see who signs. And if the folks elect not to sign, then we will go forward and we'll build a booster pump, or at least that would be my recommendation. That concludes my comments. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Supervisor Giacomini, followed by Supervisor Chappelle.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. Pat, we've heard from a couple of the property owners that the booster pump system won't work. What is your opinion on that?
They're individual booster pumps?
Correct.
The problem that they're encountering is that they're putting the booster pumps elevated up above their meters. If you have a meter and you have even 10 psi, and then you've got a booster pump, that booster pump can not only pull at 0, it can pull at negative. It can pull suction. So if the pump is located next to the meter and then it pushes through the backflow preventer, there is no hydraulic problem. I think Mr. Reuter would confirm that as a hydraulic engineer. The problem is the location of the pumps, the configuration of the pumps, and I question whether all of them have gone out and tried to configure this. Some folks have successfully installed their pumps up there. We're only dealing with 7 parcels. At least one of those parcels is vacant. Mr. Boyd has a unique situation. He is at the high point because that's where we want to locate the tank, because he is at the high point. The fire hydrant across the street, there are other fire hydrants in the area that can provide the necessary fire flows. That was a bonus fire hydrant. It was installed because there were a cluster of houses there. But this does meet the fire flow standards, as confirmed by the engineer. So I've wandered somewhat off your question. In my opinion, a pump facility, each individual pump can be installed, and the county will, if necessary, install one. But it will be much cheaper if folks can install their own and pull off their own electric and house the thing and care for the thing.
Okay. Supervisor Chappelle, followed by Supervisor Modi.
Yeah, Mr. Minturn, the booster pump that you're talking about, what kind of pressure would they receive at their house then?
Well, it varies because some houses are above the road and some are below the road. At a minimum, we would provide 40 psi at the meter.
Does that seem like a better solution than them trying to tie in with their own individual pumps?
No, it does not. In my opinion, they can build individual facilities for several $1,000s apiece. So several $1,000s times 7 properties is $20,000, whereas a community system will cost over $100,000 to construct.
Okay, so they've expressed the concern that the backflow valves don't have enough pressure to shut off, and I'm relatively familiar with the backflow valve. It does have to have pressure to shut off, but your feeling is that they are shutting off?
The problem that they're expressing is that the backflow preventer doesn't have enough pressure to open it for the water to flow in the correct direction. But if the pump is located in front of that, the pump can push on through it. And most of the properties have over 20 psi, and there would be well over 20. Some of them have 25, 30, Some of them are down, the houses are down below. So each situation is a little unique, but if the pump is located right next to the meter, it can push right through the backflow preventer. There's no problem.
And make sure the backflow valve would operate properly then.
It would.
Thank you.
Supervisor Modi, followed by Supervisor Baugh.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. One of the speakers mentioned that they followed the specs provided by PACE or by the county to put where to put their pumps. Is it your opinion that they maybe didn't do that, or is there some, or they put it close but it's elevated and that's what's causing the problem?
They did not place the pumps where we told them to. Rather, they put them in the order in which we suggested. We provided a schematic for folks who, because many folks are going to need booster pumps. You see there's a lot of elevation. The schematic that we provided showed for a meter, a backflow preventer, and a pump. Well, in these unique situations, there's a few where the backflow preventer and the pump need to be reversed. And in that way, the county standard needs to be modified somewhat. A plumber can easily reverse those two structures. The main problem is the location of the tank, the booster pump. They've put it up above. The county detail never indicated that that would be acceptable. It needs to be down near the pump. Many folks are up on hills that are several hundred feet above the meter. There's no way that they could possibly put a booster up at their house.
I remember this was very similar to what we had in Centerville. We had a number of homes that live up on the mountaintops or the ridges, and they had the same issue where they need to put the booster pump. Someone were putting their booster pumps halfway up the hill and stuff, and it was never enough. But if I'm not mistaken, the standard is that we had to, well, it was 20 psi, now it's 40. It's at the property line, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, that's where you have to put it at, not necessarily where they put the meter. It's where it's at the property line, I believe.
The meter is at the property line.
Yeah, so. And then, well, I think you explained why you wouldn't recommend removing the backflow preventers. I think I would agree with that. I wouldn't want to have even, it's not that you were saying that someone said, guilty before they're proven innocent. It's just, it's too easy for somebody somewhere down the line to mistakenly change it, do something, you sell the house, someone else turns the pump on to the well, and so, okay, thank you.
Supervisor Baugh?
Well, thank you. Supervisor Modi actually asked my question in regards to the design and whether they had met the standards, and they had mentioned professional installation and county standards. In the end, they need to have the ability to provide water to their home. So in your best opinion, you've made a recommendation and allowed some finances for individual systems to be installed at each home. I heard mention by one of the speakers that 5 people had already taken you up on that. Is that correct?
We only sent out the letter yesterday.
Okay.
We have, however, we have had discussions with the property owners, and most of them have been very receptive. There was one property owner saying that he thought that $3,000 would be more appropriate. But otherwise, they've been very receptive, aside from one property owner. One property owner has expressed reservations out of the 7.
I guess the end answer is that we've all, property owners and the county, have spent a lot of years, a lot of public money investing in a system that we all want to be successful. We all have the same exact goal. So in the end, can you tell us that we'll get through this hurdle as well, and these folks will be provided with the water they need?
Yes, I can. Our path forward will work one way or another.
Thank you.
Further questions, Mr. Minturn? What is the pleasure of the board concerning C-25?
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you. Been moved and seconded that we accept the staff recommendation and approve C-25. Further discussion of the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Minturn. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, the Shasta County Board of Supervisors will adjourn and convene as the Shasta County Water Agency. Shasta County Board of Supervisors does not receive any additional compensation or stipend for acting as the Shasta County Water Agency. There's one item on the consent calendar, and that is to appoint Supervisor Giacomini as a representative and Supervisor Modi as an alternate to the Policy Advisory Board for the Reading Area Water Council. Pleasure of the board concerning this item.
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Further discussion of the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The Shasta County Water Agency will adjourn and reconvene as the Shasta County Board of Supervisors. Item R3, Administrative Board of Supervisors receive a legislative update and consider action on specific legislation related to Shasta County's legislative platform, and 2, consider approving and authorizing the chairman to sign a letter to the California Health and Human Services Secretary which opposes proposed Medicare cuts affecting rural hospitals and long-term care facilities, and 3, consider approving and authorizing the chairman to sign a letter to the California State University Chico Center for Economic Development, which supports the Golden Bear Broadband Limited Liability Corporation's Northern California Regional Middle Mile Infrastructure application for broadband infrastructure deployment funds, and finally, to receive supervisors' reports on countywide issues. Thank you, Mr. Lees.
Easy for you to say, Chair Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe and members of the board. I do want to, as it relates to our legislative platform, specifically the budget portion, I do want to give you a brief update on the state of the state. As you know, the state received some good news that their budget revenue had exceeded by about $5 billion for the month of January. And so, or was that December? Last fiscal month. But I want to just, as you know, the ever caution, this is not a trend yet, and we're not sure if this has a lot to do, this is for December, because we're not sure if this has a lot to do with the 2013 tax laws changing and a lot of individuals cashing out on their 401ks and things prior to the rates changing for 2013. So we don't know if we have seen the trend yet. I've been on conference calls with the state, and we're trying to determine if this is going to be a trend that we're seeing. Obviously, we hope it is, but we're not certain yet. The good news is, I mean, you heard some earlier news about us being able to refinance and save some annual dollars. And that's significant because as we see exactly what happens with the state and determine whether or not we're starting to be on this little bit of an upswing, we have additional costs that continue to rise. And the fact that we're able to save those additional dollars on an annual basis because of the refinancing means that we will now be able to make up for those, for some of those costs increasing. And so it's not that I hope everybody's not rubbing their hands, what are we going to buy with this new money? The good news is, and this is good news, is that we're able to stay flat. It's going to be our intent to tell the departments they will not have to cut this next year. But because of this money from the refinancing and some other things, we hope to be in a position to keep in mind the county of Los Angeles lost a lawsuit that indicated the property tax administration fee goes to the cities. Well, that is a significant dollar. It's about $500,000 hit to Shasta County on that ruling. And so there are other things and gaps that we're going to have to fill, and this is extremely good news that we have the money to fill that gap without having to go back to departments and take additional cuts. Also, along with the legislative report, you see a couple letters. We had a letter from Mayor's Hospital. There are some realignments. I'm on a state committee with the CSAC, California Association of Counties, and we are looking at how the Medi-Cal cuts are going to roll out, what they're going to do. Is it going to be a county program, state program? And part of that is on the cuts, they would have a significant hit to some of the rural hospitals. And so we're not necessarily looking to say, don't make the cuts, but we're looking for exemptions for the rural hospitals so that they can have an opportunity to continue to survive. They do not have the same economies of scale as a large community with a large population, and because of that, it's more expensive. And they rely on these Medi-Cal support, on the Medi-Cal support to help their patients out there. So that's number one. I'm asking if the board would consider approving that, and we'll ask for a motion on that right now, if I might, and then we'll go to the next letter.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Did you want to contribute something else? Okay, very good. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the letter. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we will send that on. Now, the final part of my report is the broadband issue. And we know that we have limited capacity, especially once we get out of the core city of Reading. We have limited capacity in many areas to have high-speed internet, high-speed data. That not only impacts residential use, but business, emergency services. And so there is an effort, this has been going on for probably a decade actually, but there is an effort going forward to identify someone that could manage opportunity to collect grants and build an infrastructure that would support the more rural areas of the counties. And Shasta County is one of those counties. And so we are asking the board support to go forward and say, yes, we believe that this is the right thing to do. They're not asking for any money, financial support, or anything like that. It's more as of a designation so that they can take those dollars that have been allocated for rural growth to put towards broadband expansion within our limited areas. And so I'd look for a motion and a second on that also.
So moved. We have a motion and a second to approve the letter. Is further in discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we'll go to receive supervisors' reports on countywide issues. We'll start with Supervisor Giacomini, if you would, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. This week I was able to attend the Veteran of Foreign Wars Awards Banquet in Boerne, which was wonderful. They honored students in both their oral and written contests, as well as local law enforcement and fire departments. And it was a very well attended and very nice event.
Thank you, Supervisor Giacomini. Supervisor Modi.
Yes, thank you. I attended the NACWA board meeting as well as the strategic planning session, which was an all-afternoon session last week, and then also participated in the NACWA communications meeting. I have paperwork from the strategic planning here if anyone wants to look at it later. Along with my colleagues Supervisor Ball and Supervisor Kehoe, I attended the Haven Humane opening of the Morgan Adoption Center, which was a great event, a good chance to combine our resources with a number of agencies and have a one-stop place if you need to find your pet or if you want to adopt one. So I think it's a great addition to our services here in the county. Attended the EDC meeting. I also attended a tax sharing agreement meeting with the other two cities. Mr. Kehoe was there as well. And then a number of us attended the Sheriff's Recognition ceremony for his new staff and promotions. It was a great event. Thank you, Sheriff. And finally, I just wanted to take a moment to comment on the passing of an individual that occurred over the last couple of weeks, a former city councilman and community member, Charlie Moss, a longtime resident of our area who's contributed to many, many events and community projects, as well as his service on the council. Just a great individual. I just was sorry to see his passing, but someone who meant a lot to our area.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi. Let me join you in your observations about Mr. Moss. It was my pleasure to serve on the Reading City Council with Mr. Moss. He was a man of dignity and compassion and a high level of industry, and his passing will be missed. I also attended the RABA board meeting, and I have that material available to anyone that would care to look at it. Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. I also attended along with Supervisor Kehoe, actually, there may have been others there that I just didn't catch, but the Addicted Offender Program through the court system. And I appreciate the efforts of our local court to help people who need help and to help them and assist them to come back to a productive life and to contribute to our local economy and to our local life here. Attended the NORTEC meeting. The NORTEC consortium funds the SMART centers or their equivalent in the various 11 counties of which we are a member. We have some SMART center representatives here. I'd like to tell you they continue to meet all of their contract obligations or exceed. We really appreciate the work that you do. I have brought the report back for the benefit of the board. It's the mid-year financial report that indicates everything is in order within the NORTEC House. If anyone would like to review that, it'll be available upstairs. Also attended the Rural Counties meeting in Sacramento. For the benefit of the board and the public, I have had copies made, especially of the legislative analysts that RCRC makes available to us. This is a great asset to board members and to the community alike to be able to check in and find out what we are doing as a county and as a group, or organization of counties in regards to the various legislative matters that come before us. I also brought a recap of the last meeting. It's available as well to everyone, and there are extra copies here. Yesterday I attended the PSA2 Area Agency on Aging meeting in Pam, your beautiful district in Bernie, California. Especially enjoyed the snow cone sign that's almost covered with snow. that was my highlight for the day. The AAA representing our seniors in Shasta County, also Siskiyou County, Modoc, Lassen, and Trinity County, has, as a board, begun the process of taking a look at the Joint Powers Authority that formed it and just reevaluating. It has not been done for a number of years, since the 90s, and we're taking a close look to find out if there are better ways we can serve the public or if that's the best model. So we'll continue to keep you informed if there are other items that come up there. I wanted to also thank the sheriff for his staff recognition. It was a tremendous presentation, especially the two members, I call them hero members of the public that saved the life of a young girl on Shasta Lake. Sheriff, I applaud you for continuing to recognize those in the community that serve us. Appreciate you. Also, I wanted to thank Mr. Minturn, our Public Works Director, who, with one of my last-minute calls, spent the afternoon in Shingletown with me. I wanted to review personally with Mr. Minturn in hand road issues and snow issues, and that took up most of the afternoon. Thank you for taking the time and being able to answer individually. We stopped at every home that had called us, and those that didn't, and reviewed the entire mountain. So, Mr. Brinturn, thank you for taking the time to do that with me. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. Supervisor Chappelle.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Supervisor Chappelle. Ladies and gentlemen, I think before embarking on our discussion of R4, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we will start with receiving a report on the recommended steps to improve enforcement of ordinance, Shasta County Ordinance 2011-05, and receive recommendations from the CEO relating to the creation of a medical marijuana citizens advisory committee. Thank you.